one of the bulbs is out in here. So to remove this panel, you just pull it off. It just has painting clips on it. And then there's the electrical connectors that have to be removed from the back of here. That's what the back looks like. That bottom one has a little red lock tab you have to pry up. I just used a screwdriver and just kind of pried it up. The rest of them are just squeeze tabs. Squeeze and release. While you have this open, obviously you can clean out your air ducts and clean up any other mess that's in here, like this foam rubber is disintegrating, so it's making a mess in there. I'll clean that out. This area here is famous on Dodge Chargers for coming up. So if you're wanting to fix this while you've got this apart, get some general trim adhesive. This is to spray both sides. Which is why I'm wearing gloves, because it's hard to get in there. Let it set up for about a minute before you let it touch, which is why I put the screwdrivers in there. And then we'll clamp it. When you have this piece off, there are 6 little plastic retainer clips. 1, 2, 3 on the top and 3 across the bottom. Now, it's easier if you take this whole piece out of here first. There are 4 4mm bolts that hold it in place. You take those out, you can actually remove this piece from the rest of this. One way is you need basically 3 screwdrivers or 3 something flat to slide up under there. And you need to do all 3 of them at the same time. It seems like I couldn't get it to, like, one at a time didn't work. See, all 3 of them popped out. The sides have little retainers, but they didn't seem to give me any trouble. They just came out on their own, but it's the 3 across the top, 3 across the bottom, and that will separate. This is my air conditioner panel, and there's 3 bulbs, 2 of which were out. This is the only one that was working. These little things are soldered right onto the board, so when you try to pop them off, you pop the whole thing off, which just exposes those little tabs there, but they don't tell you if they're hot or ground. And a lot of LEDs, you know, are polarized, so they only work one direction. So you see this one, I've already marked it. The hot's on the end, and the ground is the one closest to the steering wheel. This one, the hot is on the top, and the ground is on the bottom. So let me show you how you find that out if you don't know that information. So I've got this hooked up in the back still, but everything else has been removed. Alright, so you turn on your parking light, and that gives power to the bulbs. And you take your multimeter and you hook up your test leads. I'm doing this one-handed, so just pretend I've got a red and a black on here. And so if I touch the black to the top and the red to the bottom on the display here, I'm going to get a negative 12 volts. If I flip that to the black on the bottom, red on the top, it'll show 12 volts here. So that's how you know which is which. If you put the black there, red on the bottom and you get a negative, then you know the red is the top or the hot. So that is how you figure out these. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to solder in a bulb on each of those spots and hope that that resolves any issues. So I think I filmed before, I'm hoping I did anyway, these little 4mm bolts, there's 4 of them. They hold this piece here to the big trim piece that you took out of the car. Then to separate these, you just basically, there's 3 across the bottom, 3 across the top, and 1 on each side, and just kind of prise apart. I find using a thin screwdriver to kind of slide into the gap helps. And then once you start to pull it apart, you get a lot of resistance on the knobs. I guess those are what hold this thing together. You just got to pry it apart. Once you do, then all of this comes apart. So even taking the board out of here. This is how it's going to work. I had a 12-volt battery here. I've already pre-tested these, but you basically hook them up and then you mark them. Since almost every LED is polarized, meaning you can only hook it up hot and ground, whereas like a regular bulb doesn't really care. So like if I hook this up, you see it doesn't light up. That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying polarized. So the red side has to be soldered to the red part of that board there. And it's going to be a little tricky because this is what came off of there. Like I said, I honestly don't know how they got this, because it's basically soldered down kind of like that, and there's not really a way to get to it. I don't know if even from behind, so I don't know what sort of tool they had to solder. Obviously I just have a soldering iron and a soldering gun, so that kind of limits me, but this bulb should be similar in size once it's mounted to the board there, and then I'll just cut off the extra lead that I don't need. So anyway, that's the plan, and hopefully it'll work well. Just like everything else you solder, you put a little flux on there, heat this up. It's got to heat up pretty quick because you don't want to damage anything else on this board. And you know, as it's heating up, touch a little solder on there, and then when that solder melts, pull it away and let it cool before you try to pull on this at all. So my soldering appears to have worked. It's not pretty, but see that it's working. The new bulbs are actually brighter than the old one, although I'm not going to mess with the old one. I went ahead and redid all 3 bulbs and tested it out in the car. They are working, thankfully. Carefully reassemble this. It just basically snaps back together. Test to make sure you've got your knobs in the right places. I don't think you can actually force them down in the wrong spot, but it's always good before you totally reassemble the car and then have to take this out again. So this piece and this piece go together, and like I was saying earlier, the 4mm bolts are what hold this together. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And they are pretty tiny, so I put them on a magnetic board so I don't lose them. Then to put this back in the car, just reattach the electrical. There's only one place they can each go, and then it just kind of snaps in with these little spring clips. And you'll see this stuck down very well. And then just lining up the retaining clips, and it just snaps back in.